Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Diamond Discussion. I am your host, Demetrius Woods, and today we're going to talk about some good habits to kick off a great semester. I'm going to share with you 5 keys to have a firm financial foundation in high school and college, and I'll also share my personal 12 rules of success. So, without further ado, let's get started. All right, guys. So before we jump right in, I just want to give y'all a special thank you. If you've been tuning into our shows consistently, thank you so much. If you only caught one show or two, thank you so much as well. But season one was a bigger hit than I could have ever imagined. The Maddie Speaks episode hit over 10,000 listens on Spotify alone, which is a bigger tribute to her than it is me. But guys, thank you so much. I appreciate the support. I hope I continue to add value to you between myself and our various guests on the show. So, but without further ado, let's jump in. Let's jump right in here to the first topic, which is basically just having some good habits to kick off a semester. Right. So I know a lot of people are always, especially this time of year, it's like, hey, let me get a New Year's goal, New Year's resolution, and we kind of have these big, hairy, audacious goals, and they kind of fall by the wayside after a few weeks or even a couple of months, right? So, and we'll talk about setting some goals here later, but here's just a few things that I have for you today to be able to kick off the semester the right way. Number one, go to class, right? Go to class, please. So I'll be honest with you, as a college student, my very first semester up at Georgia State University in Atlanta, I was the model uh, freshman, if you will. Okay, I took my teacher's pet lifestyle from high school, and I immediately applied it to my first semester in college because I was at I was I was at class like a solid 15 to 30 minutes before class began, like saying what's up to everybody, talking to the professors, like getting to know them. It was a good time, right? But I also I studied my butt off. I made sure that I was prepared. My grades didn't always reflect my work ethic necessarily, which is whatever. That is what it is. That happens at times. But the point is though that my work ethic was there. I was ready. I was attentive. I was engaged in class, which was a big deal. Now, contrary to my last semester of college, my wife will tell you she was very upset because my wife actually had to attend 2 hour and 50-minute art classes while I majored in broadcast journalism. And so my average class was like, I think 75 minutes long, and I never went. So, and I never went for good reason. All right, I had a job. I had other things going on. But I worked out some good deals with my professors to be able to help me out on the back end. But again, I built some rapport and I got in good graces with them to be able to do that, as a senior. But either way, as you kick off the semester, unless you've got some deals worked out like that, go to class, make sure you're fully engaged, and be locked in. Be locked in on the content. Be locked in on everything that you need to be able to do to have some success in that class. Whether you're a student athlete or not, you need to go after it and get your grades and make sure you learn something. Take away some nuggets from each class session that you go to, so that time is ultimately not wasted, right? So anyway, that's number one. Number two is time management. That's a cliche, right? For sure. Like, we all know that time management is the thing that everybody talks about over and over and over and over and over again, right? But here's the thing: you got to be able to set your priorities, right? Whether that's writing it down on a piece of paper or filing away in your mind or whatever. But regardless of what your priorities look like, if you've got, the top 5 things on your list that you got to knock out, then you want to make sure that you're doing that, right? Also, certain things on our priority list may have more weight than others, right? Like, going to class may mean more to you than going to the gym for some of you, or vice versa, right? Or going to an off-campus job. or networking with people in your field, right? Or hanging out with your sorority sisters and frat brothers, or whatever the case may be, right? But again, the point is, set your priorities, set your limits, know what you got going on with that, so that when you have everything in order, you can follow that. Because here's the reality, guys, and I think I mentioned this last season probably at some point, but guess how many hours a day we have, right? That's not a joke, right? 24 hours. Okay? We've got 24 hours in a day, each and every last one of us. Okay? Now, a portion of that obviously is going to be spent sleeping. Right? A lot of you probably some of our younger viewers, I know that you guys get probably somewhere between 8 to 10 hours of sleep, which is a lot compared to me, but it is what it is, right? But whatever that is for you, some of that's going to be spent sleeping, some of that's going to be spent studying, right? Or hanging out with friends. But again, all of those hours that you have that you're awake, making sure that you prioritize those in a way that is effective and efficient, and conducive for what you need, right? And you want to make sure that the deadlines and those important dates that you may have, they don't fall by the wayside, right? Like, set those calendar appointments, do whatever you got to do to make sure you're prepared for that. So the third one, though, is, which to me should be a top priority for you, is taking care of your body. And this is such a, how do I put this nicely? This is one of those things to me that I just don't feel like should ever not be a priority for all of us. Our body's a temple, right? If you follow the Bible, and if you're a Christian or religious person, like, that our body is a temple, and it's something that should be taken care of as such, right? And so because of that, like, what you put into your body, whether it's liquids or solids or whatever, you want to be cognizant of that, and you want to make sure that your body is getting the proper nutrition that it needs, that you're working out or exercising properly so that it has energy to be able to go, right? And to have that stamina that you need. And also getting the proper sleep. Now, don't sleep too much. Don't be a bum, right? But again, making sure that you've got enough in the tank to be able to go out and take care of the other priorities, right? That you have, on that list. And speaking of exercising for a second and working out, this is important because I've kind of had some conversations in between seasons here, and I'm noticing that more and more non-student athletes are tuning into the show, which is exciting to me. That's really cool. We've got student athletes though as well from all various different sports: basketball players, football players, not just the diamond sports. And so here's my point that I want to make though: whether you're a student athlete, you're a coach, you're a player, parent, common student, whatever, you got to take care of this thing we call our body, right? Because there's no way you can live long and healthy without taking care of it. Okay, right? I heard I don't remember where I heard it from, but like, it was a very quick quote, and it's like, the goal is to become old, right? Well, we don't grow old if we're not healthy, right? If we're not taking care of our body. So I think I've beaten that dead horse enough for you. So I'm gonna go to number 4 here, which is also to build relationships, and meaningful ones at that, right? You've got in college and in high school to a lesser degree, but like in college, you've got, academic advisors, you've got tutors, obviously your professors, business people, or people in your field of study, that you can connect with. You've got, of course, friends to make acquaintances, among your peers and peer groups and things of that nature, right? But building those relationships can be so impactful. Like, my best friend came from my college years. And I call him Peace Straw. I promise you guys, I'm going to get him on the show sometime soon. I don't know if he lives out in Los Angeles, maybe coming to Georgia soon, or we may meet somewhere in the middle. But either way, I'm going to have him on the show, and it'll probably be a long one, just to just chatting with you guys. But I think it's just important though to have those relationships, because one, you never know where they can take you. And two, you also, on the flip side of that, you never know what you can, where you can take somebody else, right? Like you can be a benefit to somebody else, in a lot of different ways, and vice versa. So those relationships are important. I think it's also important to know that as you build those relationships with people, don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it, right? I think some of us sometimes, especially student athletes, I'm picking on us for a second, because sometimes we can be so driven, so focused on and locked in on what our mission is, right? And we're like, well, I can do it. I can take care of it because we're kind of alpha. Typically we're personalities, right? And because of that, it's like, well, when we get into a bind or maybe we're stuck in a rut, it's like, well, I'm just gonna keep pressing the gas, right? And I'm gonna figure out a way to get out of here on my own. And you don't have to do all of that. Right? Sometimes it's just, call call the call the service, right? Call the service, say, hey, can you help me? Can you tow me out of this rut? And then it's done real easy, and there's no problems, right? It's not a big headache. So again, all that to say, be willing to ask for help when you need it. Again, back to those academic advisors. If you don't know what classes to take, call them up. That's why they're there. That's what they get paid for, right? Don't feel like you're bugging somebody. Especially if it's in their job description to advise you academically, or if it's somebody in the business world or somebody in your field of study. Like, I'm sure they'd be more than willing to offer any piece of advice they can share with you of how to get to where they are, right? Because they were where you are right now, right? And they've taken the steps to where you're trying to go ultimately, right? And so I rarely meet anybody in the business world that isn't willing to give back to students and give their time and knowledge in such a way. So I think that's important. The fifth thing, before we go to commercial break here, the fifth thing is to set attainable goals. As I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about that because I feel like, guys, you want to make the most of the collegiate experience, right? It's about exploring. It's about going out, branching out, just finding yourself a little bit, but also just figuring out what the world has to offer beyond just your whether it was a small town or a big town, just beyond just your high school parameters, right? You're going off to college to figure out what's more for me out there, right? And I think as you do that, it's important to, especially at the beginning of a semester or whatever, to set some attainable goals. And as I mentioned at the onset of this show, sometimes we can set goals that are well beyond our stretch of imagination, right? Like it's like, and then we get discouraged though, right? When we don't hit those goals. And so as the year wanes or even as the weeks go by, it's like, man, I don't really feel like I'm gonna be able to hit these goals. This is a bit much. But when you back in, maybe mid December or early January, whenever you were writing those goals down, you were all excited about it. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna hit these goals, whether it's physical or mental or whatever the case, whatever type of goal it is. You're all gung ho about it when you're writing it down. But then when it's time to for the rubber to meet the road, it's like, ugh, I don't really know about this. So my encouragement to you guys is that you'll be realistic with yourself and set some attainable goals, right? Be willing to set some benchmarks as well, right? You don't have to have a full 365-day, Rolodex of goals. Set some goals just for the first week, right? We've got 52 weeks a year. Set some weekly goals. And those weekly goals will ultimately mathematically compound into monthly goals, and those will compound into quarterly goals, and ultimately you've got a year's worth of goals. But break it down into smaller pieces. If you're the type of person that can't look at the broad scope of things, and you need to kind of see it cut into pieces a little bit, then do that, right? Set it from on a weekly basis or monthly basis or what have you. That way you have a better shot of one, tracking it, but two, hopefully attaining it too. So again, that's what that looks like. Those are kind of my five things to share with you right off the cuff here. of having some good success, early on in the semester, whether it's your very first semester of college or, for some of you with COVID years, it might be like your 10th or 11th. But either way, having good success is important whether you're in college, high school, the business world, doesn't matter. But I think this is critical for all of us to follow. And even if you're outside, again, even if you're outside the realm of school, these can be of impact to you as coaches and parents. I'm sure you know how to apply that to yourself as well. So today's show is going to be really about making lists. I think today's show is going to be the easiest one we've ever done in terms of you being able to write down notes and follow me step by step, because I'm kind of giving you some list of things as we go along here. And so, like, the next topic that we'll jump into after the break here is just 5 ways to have a firm financial foundation, whether you're in high school or in college. And so I'm going to give you guys those 5 keys, and I hope you'll soak it in and hopefully apply them right out of the gate. So let's break real quick, and we'll be right back. Hey guys, thanks so much for pausing here. I want to take a quick moment to highlight Flow Space. This is where we get a chance to shoot our podcast each and every single week. Specifically for business owners and entrepreneurs, we've got some office spaces available that you can rent out month by month basis. So if you're looking to do something like that, check us out. We're right here behind Parkside Main 8 Movie Theater here in Greensboro, Georgia. Or you can check us out online at goflowspace.org. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, welcome back to the show. So before I jump into the 5 keys real quick of our financial success, I want to give myself a little bit of credibility or share my credibility with you. So I've been in the financial services world for the better part of 9 years now. And I actually got involved when I was in college. I think I've shared this a little bit before in previous shows. But so that's kind of where my financial knowledge comes from and financial backing there. So I definitely know what I'm talking about on this side of the spectrum, because it's just kind of my everyday thing that I do, that I get an opportunity to help people with. So, but with that being said, I just want to, like I said, I want to give us 5 very simple, applicable things that you can use as a high schooler, especially as a college student as well, to be able to have some financial success and to be able to work towards, being a responsible adult by the time you're 20, 21, 22, out of college and beyond. So the first one, very simple. Regardless of your income, now I say regardless, like hopefully it's more than zero, but regardless of your income, budget it. Okay, and I know that sounds like, okay, yeah, we've heard that before. Well, yes, you have, but do you do it? Right? Because here's a way that you can budget right out of the gates. As much as you've heard me, if you've listened to the show enough, you've heard me talk about making lists, writing things down, right? Seeing it on paper and then bringing that to life. Same thing with our expenses. If you got $1,000 a month that you make, budget that $1,000 a month that you make, right? Before you go make it, right? So we know, okay, I got $1,000 that I'm probably going to make this month. Well, how is that going to be allocated? How is that going to be expended, right? So what buckets is that going in? Well, do I have rent? Like if you're in college, do you have rent to pay? Do you have utilities? Do you have a phone bill? Do you have insurance? Do you have books to pay for? Guys, are you taking your lady out to, for dates and dinner, whatever? Girls, are you going shopping, or what are you reserving your money for? Right? And so we lay that out on paper, okay? And we go, okay, fine. I got $1,000. How much of this do I have to devote to my non-negotiables, right? So on this side, I've got my non-negotiables, which is rent, food, gas, those types of things, right? And then I got my negotiables, which is probably shopping, going out to eat, whatever, the ins and odds type stuff. So you look at that and you go, okay, how closely am I following this budget from month to month? Because if I have 70% of this allocated towards my non-negotiables, and 30% of it allocated towards my negotiables, but it's more like 50-50 in real life, then something's not adding up, right? We've got to dial something back over here on the negotiable side of things so that our non-negotiables can be paid for. Because in the spirit of time management, priorities, those types of things, our non-negotiables should be above the negotiables, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense to you. So budget what you do, right? Budget everything you have, because, and I guess this is more of a freebie now that I'm on the subject. My family, we live off of about, and I know this is different for everybody. So this isn't, there's no necessarily right way or wrong way. So my way is not the right way probably for everybody, but I live off of about 60%, sometimes 50, but about 60% of my income, I live off of it. Meaning that my mission each and every month is to literally save 40%, 30 to 40% or more of what I make. Right? And I'm saving that for the future, right? The future Demetrius that's going to have gray hair and more wrinkles and, all that other stuff, right? Who will hopefully appreciate what I'm doing today. Same for you though, right? Whoever you are, whatever your name is, think about yourself in the future. We talked about growing old on the last segment there, right? So think about the older version of you, whether you're 14 years old listening to this, or 41, or 85, or anywhere in between, right? I guess 85. Just do your thing if you're 85. Anyway, I'm just kidding. So either way, though, think about the older version of yourself and how that person can benefit from you laying the bricks today for that person. Okay. And the last thing I'll say on the budgeting part is, and this is kind of an old saying that, well, it's old to me, but I learned this from a business partner, and he very simply put it. He said, Demetrius, in life, what we treat casually will become a casualty. Right. And that stuck with me because that was said to me like 8.5 years ago. And it sticks with me today. And I think about that in a lot of different phases of my life, especially my finances. But there's other aspects of our life that can apply to. But again, and all he's saying there, right there, is that what you don't pay attention to typically gets left behind in the dust, right? It doesn't grow. It doesn't add up to be something that you maybe wanted it to be. So you think about those New Year's resolutions, or you think about those good habits to start off a great first semester. Well, if you treat those and you focus on those with attention to detail and responsibility, it has a larger likelihood of growing to where you wanted to see it, right? But if you treat it casually, again, it'll become a casualty. So that's number one. Number two is to build an emergency fund. And this is an important one to me. And this isn't really about saving for the older you. This is, I mean, technically it is, I guess, but this is really about just saving for life when like life happens. Right? I know we can all probably replace that with a different word, but like life happens. And so because life happens, the rainy days, the flat tires, you know, if you're in college, you're getting hit with, maybe you thought your refund check was going to be $3,000 and it ends up being $1,200, right? I've had former players have to deal with that early on in their college careers, right? But you've got those rainy days that take place. So to be able to build up a strong emergency fund is important. Well, some of you may be thinking, well, dang, Demetrius, I don't even make that much. So how can I even do that? Well, here's the thing. Make less in your mind, right? Or take less of what you make in your mind to yourself. I mentioned earlier, I live off of about 60%. My family does of our income. So that's me saying, hey, there's 40% of my income that I pretend doesn't exist, which means early on in my younger 20s, it's a little tight, right? The budget was tight because I'm putting money in these other buckets, saving for retirement, saving for those emergency fund, those rainy days, and my everyday bills and non-negotiables or whatever. Like I had to keep those at a minimum until I was able to, raise up my income and continue to grow it and whatever. So I get it. I'm a millennial, and but I guess regardless of what generation you're in, like, we all go through tough times. But I think it's important that we make sure that we don't repeat those tough times, right? If today is tough, that doesn't mean that next year has to be tough, right? Like, you can set yourself up today. Like, this year might be tough, but it's because you're deciding for it to be tough. It's not because you don't have it. You have it, but you have it in a bucket over here saying, I'm not going to touch it, which is important. And if you don't have that discipline to not touch it, then if you're an athlete or if you're a student or whatever, then send that money to mom and dad and say, hey, listen, will you keep this in your account so that I can't see it and so that I can't easily just boom, boom, transfer that over from Cash App or my savings account or whatever, right? If you don't feel like you have that kind of discipline. So again, I think it's very, very important, guys, to build that emergency fund. You'll thank yourself when it's there. I'll just put it that way. I've had plenty of occasions where that emergency fund has saved my butt, right, or saved a friend's butt even because I had it, right. So again, for what that's worth, put it in your back pocket. All right, the third thing is to minimize your debt. Well, that's a pretty simple one, right? Like, the less you owe somebody else, the more you get to keep in your pocket. And I know for certain, as college students, a lot of us, we go into debt early on, right? Whether because of old Sally Mae student loan type stuff. And so because of that, it's like, man, we're starting out under the ground. Like, we're not even on the ground floor. We're starting out 6 feet under, feels like, in debt from day one. And that can feel like a daunting task. And on the student loan, I guess, specific side of things, is I always encourage people to talk to their parents about that stuff, talk to your advisors about it. Make sure that you have a frame of mind, an understanding of, like, what that's going to mean for your future, and know that, hey, there's a plan in place there for you to get that stuff paid off, and you don't have to feel so overwhelmed with it, throughout your entire course of college on the student loan side of things. But beyond that, like, the biggest, to me, the biggest monster to college students when it comes to debt is credit cards, right? Like, it's like, oh my gosh, the credit card companies just, like, they eat you up with with credit card offers. They're coming at you in the mailbox. Here's $300 limit here. Here's a $500 limit here. Here's a $100 limit here. Oh, we'll give you cash back for this. And before you know it, you're sitting in your dorm room with 6 credit cards totaling up to $2,500, and all of a sudden you've racked them all up, and you only make $500 a month. So how are you going to pay off $2,500 in credit cards on top of paying your bills and saving for the rainy days and all that jazz, right? So credit cards are a great way to build up your credit, which I'll talk about here in a second. But if used improperly and without good judgment, it can be a detriment to us. So please, guys, don't fall into that trap with the credit card companies. Like, credit cards can be a good thing, but don't do that. And honestly, I didn't get a credit card of my own until you guys are gonna laugh at this, but probably about 6 months ago. No lie. And so all through college, didn't have one. I'm 28 years old now, about to be 29 in a few months, and I just got my first credit card last year, 2023. So I say that to say that doesn't have to be your run. I'm weird about, like, not spending money that I don't have, and so I always kind of looked at credit cards as just one of those little hooks that just get in you and you can't get rid of it, right? So all that to be said, whatever your journey is, if you're, and again, that's me recognizing that potentially I didn't have the discipline to, honestly, just being candid with you, and I feel like I had the discipline to do what was right by a credit card. Therefore, I'm like, I'm not even going to touch one. I'm going to rip that up. That envelope that you get in the mail, I ripped it up, threw it in the trash, didn't even look at the offer. if you feel like you have that kind of discipline, though, get your credit card, build up your credit, and get yourself in a better spot on that front. Taking me to my next point here, though, take the time to learn about financial literacy, and that's understanding credit cards, credit scores, how to invest your money, how to manage money, those types of things. And there's people in your circle, adults in your circle, your parents specifically, who probably understand credit scores, credit cards, investing their money, managing their money, that you can go to, that'll help you with that kind of stuff. And maybe it's not mom and dad, but maybe it's a professor, or maybe it's a dad of a friend, or a mom of a friend, or an aunt, or whoever it is, right, in your life. I know a lot of my players and my peers have come to me because they know that I'm in the financial services world, so it makes sense for them to pick my brain on some stuff. But whoever it is in your world and your circle that you feel comfortable with to talk to about that kind of thing, do it and pick their brain, and go after it. Make sure that you learn as much as you possibly can. And oh, by the way, there's this thing called Google that you can learn a little bit about as well, and not people's opinions necessarily about stuff. It's just learning how credit scores work and how to build that properly, and what exactly out there can severely damage your credit score, and why is that even important to begin with, right? So again, there's things like that on the investment side of things, which I can get on a whole soliloquy on that, but like, investing your money is so important, again, for the older version of you, so that you've got some things squared away on that front, and making your money work for you, right? Again, I'm not going to dig too much into that, but making that a priority, guys, sooner than later, will help you. It'll put you in a situation after high school. If you're a high school graduate and you're not even looking to go to college, and you're looking to go to just go in a trade, or go right to work, again, take the necessary steps now while you're 16, 17, about to be 18 or whatever, before you graduate high school, so that you can be prepared. But if you're going to college, and kind of, college is, again, like I said, that exploration time that gives you a little bit more time to learn and make some mistakes or whatever, before I guess adulthood really hits. Take the time to study those things, and make that a part of your routine and your regimen. So anyway, I can go on and on about that. The fifth thing and the last thing is to increase your cash flow, right? Figure out what that looks like for you. If you're in high school and you make $100 a month, and that's enough for you, fantastic, right? But figure out how to go beyond that, how to double that, right? If you make $500 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever that is, right? The likelihood is that you probably feel like it's not enough, whatever your number is at the time. And so, because you feel like that, it's a matter of, okay, well, let me figure out how to make more of it. Okay? It's not always about racking up, a bunch of dollars, right? I mean, everybody would like to say, "Hey, I want to be a millionaire." Well, sure, that'd be good too. That'd be awesome. All right, but a lot of us aren't going to be millionaires. Okay, most people make less than $2 million in a lifetime, statistically speaking, right? So the likelihood of us being millionaires, pretty slim. However, the likelihood of us being good stewards of what we have can be pretty high if we decide to make that decision. All right. However, increasing our cash flow along the way as much as we possibly can, right? Taking those steps. Now, again, as students and even student athletes, especially, it can be tough to increase our cash flow. It may mean we're being a little bit creative. We've got to do summer jobs. We're babysitting. We're doing lessons. Man, to be able to do baseball lessons or softball lessons or basketball, whatever it is, for younger athletes trying to hone their craft and get to where you are, that's a huge way to give back, number one. But also, you spend an hour of your time, charge them, right? Charge them something for your time, right? Your time isn't free, and you should charge them for that, obviously, right? So that's a great way to make money if you're a student athlete. You can tutor people. There's a lot of creative ways to make money without having a, like a job, I guess, a 9 to 5 job or a job that you got to go to and clock in or whatever. So, you can get creative with that, if you don't have time to go get an off campus job or what have you. So, that's my advice to you guys. I know that, so I'll just be honest with you. This segment was inspired by actually a couple of players that I've gotten a chance to just sit down with recently and talk about just where they are financially. And, so I'll begin to kind of dig into this a little bit more. I know it's a little bit off the beaten path in terms of the diamond discussion. But I think it can add value to you in your life, and that's obviously what I'm about here on the show. So, real quick, we're going to take another break. We're going to jump into our open book segment here next and answer a few of your questions, as I always appreciate. So, give me a second, talk to you about Hike the Mountain real quick, and I'll be right back. Hey guys, so want to give a quick highlight for Hike the Mountain, led by Jay Thompson. And one of the things that he stands on is if you want to get from where you are to where you want to be, you simply must be willing to hike the mountain. And you can check him out at hikethemountain.org for more information on what that could look like for you from a company culture standpoint, as well as an individual setting. He's all about growing people, growing culture, and making us a better person. So, if you will, check him out again at hikethemountain.org for more information. Thank you. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. So, one of my favorite segments, probably my most favorite segment, as I typically share with you, is our open book time because it's just an opportunity for me to answer free flowing questions from you guys. And if you don't know where to submit those questions, so right on our Instagram page, actually, I guess, yeah, on our Instagram page. So in our stories, periodically we'll post requesting questions for the show. But you can DM us any question that you want to know, and that can be about me personally. That can be about a future guest, former guest, anything that you want to know. I'll do my best to answer it honestly and as educationally as I possibly can. So, with that being said, let's jump into today's first question, which is from Randall B. And Randall says here, what general advice would you give to this generation of players? And Randall, when I thought about your question, man, it was one thing popped into my head right away, and I guess that's what I'm going to hang my hat on here. So this generation of players, I think about where players are today, high schoolers specifically, and it's a lot of me, right? It's this thing right here that's pointing at me right now, a camera, right? And it's on me, and there's lights and just a lot of it. And so, and it, and I say that nicely. It's not like it's a bad thing, but it's I'm coaching softball, and mom or dad or cousin or brother, whoever, like, player comes up to bat, boom, we got the camera out, behind the fence, ready to, video the next bomb or the next double, the next opportunity, whatever. Or, girls pitching or, whatever, and I referee high school and collegiate basketball. And so it's like, show me your highlight film. And so my point there is that it's a lot of me. It's a lot of inward, right? And so my biggest general advice right now, Randall, is to have that team over me mentality. And I'm going to have a guest on the show probably next week, maybe even the week after, but really, really excited about having her on. I won't mention her name just yet, but I know that this is a mentality that she lived by, or that she lives by rather, former player of mine, and she embodied it better than anybody I think I've ever coached, because of just the way that she carried herself. And anyway, I won't get into bragging on her too much, but team over me is important, and it's important in a lot of ways, and you can Randall, you can have that team over me mentality and still focus on you. And what I mean by that is that you can, one of the best ways to help the team is to be productive, right? Well, the best way to be productive is to practice your craft, right? So work your butt off when nobody else is looking. That is a great way to have a team mentality. It's also a great way to have a me mentality too, but that helps the team. Work your butt off that way. I think you also, the other aspect of it that doesn't really take much practice is to be one of the biggest cheerleaders for your teammates. You don't have to go home and practice that. If you genuinely love and trust and care about your teammates, your people, it's easy to cheer for them. I become some of my players' biggest fans. Seriously. And I mean it's a thing of beauty. Maddie Speaks, who we had on the show a few weeks ago back in season 1. And her episode reached over 10,000 views. I said this earlier, and it was really, like I said, mostly about her on that front. I think she was a great interviewee for the first time, whatever. But she's one that I look at and I go, she was really good at making sure that she was a fan of her teammates, but I became one of her biggest fans. I enjoyed watching her play the game, right? And so as her coach, by the way, and so if that was easy for me to do as her coach, someone who is constantly critiquing her, for you as a teammate, piece of cake, should be a walk in the park for you to be a cheerleader of your teammates, right? So that's the second way I would say. And I guess the third way is to internalize, embody, and exude one of my favorite acronyms. And I call it Whitney, WITNE, and that stands for whatever it takes, no excuses, right? Whatever it takes, no excuses. And I think that I won't get into that because I think it's self-explanatory, but whatever that means to you when you hear that phrase and hear that acronym, Whitney, you go into that full on, full blast, and you make sure that you take care of your team first, you second. And that's just the way I look at it. So I know I got long winded there, but that would be my advice, generally speaking, to this specific generation of players. Just partly because of the technology age that we're in, and just kind of the where the focal points seem to lie right now. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, next one here. So this one is from Michelle H, and she asks, "What are some everyday drills that you recommend?" Now, I think this is a really simple question, easy one. So I don't want to fumble it. So one of the drills that I love to do every single day, if I'm doing a lesson with a player, I try to do it every day in practice or every time we have practice, but I know we don't always get to it. But it's just simply for infielders, really for everybody, but specifically for infielders, is just doing a short hop drill. And I love with certain players when we're doing one-on-one workouts, infielders, I'll do 2 to 250 of these, you know, out of the gates. Like before we really even, well, actually, after we warm our arms up and stretch, I'm sitting here on a bucket. She's about maybe 4 or 5 feet away from me, and I'm just hitting her with short hops. Boom, boom, boom. And she's working on, or he, keeping that chest down, keeping the eyes down, chin down, and everything. And we're just simulating that very last hop that you're going to get on the infield off the bat, right? So that's a batted ball, and it may bounce 4 or 5 times or whatever before it gets to you. Those hops don't matter. It's that very last hop. Boom. What do we look like when that very last hop takes place? Are we putting ourselves in a position to be able to make a throw across the diamond or to wherever we're going to turn a double play or what have you? So that would be one. For the outfielders, I love a good drop step drill. There's various ways to do the drop step drill, but I love to just basically I become a quarterback and a football quarterback, and I send my players on a drop step route to become a wide receiver, and they're making a catch overhead, outstretched arm, back, whatever it is. And so it's just really, encouraging um, that movement, right, left or right, whether you drop stuff into the left or the right, regardless, it's encouraging that movement and getting that good feel. And I also use this specific drill approaching the fence as well, and I love it because it forces them to kind of be cognizant of where the fence is, how far they are off the fence. Because here's the thing, and one reason I do this drill is because I always talk to my outfielders about this. Well, I say always, most of the time, because they know now that like before you jump on or like before you jump into the game, as you take the field for the first inning of defense, like I want you to go and know how many steps you are from the fence. Like your stride, how many strides is it going to take at full speed to take, to get you to the fence, right? That's a great drill to have. That's a great thing to do pregame. So like, hey, if I'm about 8, 9 steps away from the fence, well, I know then I'm gonna have to, be talking to the fence after step 7, right? So again, that's just one for the outies. For batters, I know my next guest on the show, most likely she actually is no, maybe it's not her. Maddie, it's Maddie who hates T work. I think I could be butchering this, but I'm pretty sure it's Maddie. Either way, the point is though, whether you love T work, hate it, like it, not sure about it, just do it. Okay? Just do it because it can be very, very beneficial to you. And you don't have to live on it, right? You don't have to do it all the time and whatnot, but it's something that's important for you because I know hitting a ball that's sitting still on a tee can be boring for some. Now, it was fun for me. I lived on the tee. But in terms of your mechanics of your swing and breaking it down, T work has a great way of doing that. Or hitting the ball opposite field or pulling the ball or hitting the ball up the middle. Like you can really manipulate things the way you want to with a tee, which is why it's good. It's good to have. But it's not, too much of it can possibly be detrimental. So I get why some players don't exactly love it. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. So Michelle, thank you so much for sharing that or asking that one because I enjoy just sharing some simple everyday drills when we get the opportunity. So this is an interesting question. Again, more about me, I guess. So this is from Stacy J, and she just asked, "What does your life look like when you're not coaching?" So very good question. So I'm coaching usually I guess like 7 months out of the year. I've kind of got my coaching hat on or mentality on. 7 to 8 months out of the year, or whatever it is. And so I guess Stacey, as it pertains to like softball, baseball world, outside of coaching, I am consistently helping our players, get recruited to, play at the next level, which is obviously an important thing. But I give lessons to, I give lessons to hitters and defenders and whatnot. Very, very minimal with pitchers on the softball side of things. I can max out on the baseball side with pitchers. And then, with catchers and things like that, I can do a little bit. But either way, I'm giving lessons or I am, working out the schedule for the next season for travel ball and, going on college visits with players, constantly on the phone with collegiate coaches to, help our players get their foot in the door, that kind of thing. But outside of ball, though, I like to travel a lot with my family. That's something that I mentioned about budgeting and all that jazz earlier. Like we don't shop a whole bunch as a family, like clothes and shoes, and like my players, like, some of them like joke at me because like we do some team outings and stuff, right? And they typically know it's like blue jeans and a t-shirt, or if it's hot, like shorts and a t-shirt. And I wear the same stuff all the time. I look like I don't have any clothes in my closet, which I do, but I just wear the same clothes. I don't shop a whole bunch because a large part of my budget goes towards traveling. We love to travel around the country and specifically to sporting events, but also just to see the countryside and things like that. I also referee, as I mentioned before, high school basketball. I referee collegiately as well, and I'm currently planning to take that next step into refereeing. So I'll be a little bit more busy with that in the future. Obviously, I do this podcast on my free time. I spend a lot of time with my family, my wife, and my daughter. I run a couple of businesses. One, as I mentioned before, in the financial services world. I have a solar company that I run, a couple other things that I dabble in, or I publish a local magazine here in Lake Oconee, Georgia. So I've got my hands in a lot of different things, kind of a weird jack of all trades and whatnot. But yeah, so that's what my life looks like outside of coaching. I love to play a game, a very fast growing game called pickleball. I shoot a lot of basketball on my own. I don't run up and down the court a bunch around this area. There's not a lot of people to do that with, but I throw bullpens on my own. I run a lot. That's a big hobby of mine. I run to just one to stay in shape, and to two make sure I can still eat what I want in moderation. So anyway, there's a lot of things that I can probably tell you about my life outside of this, but in a general sense, that's what it looks like outside of coaching. So hopefully that's not too boring for you. All right. So this other question is actually from me to me. And I added this one on here kind of not really as a joke, but more as I guess a prelude to a future episode where I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. And let me preface this by saying this is not meant to be an offensive question by any means for any parent or player. This is us, okay, having a chat. Okay, you pretend that you're right here with me. And the question is, what is the team's ceiling if your player is the best on the team? Let me ask that again. What is the team's ceiling if your player is the best on the team? Okay, talking to parents on that one. Players, if you're listening, rephrase that and what is the team's ceiling if you're the best player on the team? Okay, and the reason I wanted to kind of have this discussion is because I don't get this whole bunch, thankfully, about playing time and things of that nature, but I've had more and more coaches talk to me and fellow coaches, whether it be travel ball, softball, baseball related, or just other sports. But more and more coaching friends lately have just been coming to the table and venting sessions or whatever, and it's like, man, like I've always got a parent on my butt about playing time, or I've always got a player, who doesn't maybe do things they should do or whatever. Excuse me. Asking about playing time. How am I dealing? How are we dealing with that? You know what I mean? Now, I'm not going to get into all of that, but I do ask that question because I think it's an important one to consider when you are questioning things like PT, right? And so I'll kind of leave it at that because I want to spend a longer period of time on that than just a couple of seconds here. But that's one that I think is very intriguing because I think about I put myself in this scenario when I thought about the question. Um, and then oddly, I also put my daughter, who's only 4 years old, in that same situation, right? Like I put myself in like the dad mode, and I go, okay. Now I'm also a dad who's a coach, and I'm very much a realist. I'll just be honest with you guys. If Aubrey's my daughter's name. She's 4 years old. I love her to death. Light of my world. Second to my wife. If Aubrey sucks at a sport, I'm probably going to be the first to tell her. All right? I'm just being real. But I'm also going to be the first to let her know that it's okay and that we can get in the backyard and we'll work on it and we'll hone the craft. Right? What I'm not going to do, though, is go to her coach and be like, hey, yo, I need her to be in the game. I need her to be in the match. I need her to be on the court, whatever the sport may be, because of XYZ reason. Right? Or if she comes home and she's, upset, like, Dad, I'm not getting the playing time I feel like I deserve or I want or whatever. Okay, honey, let's work on it. Let's work on your game so that your coach has no choice but to put you in a game, right? So again, I know I'm getting long on that, but I'm going to visit that again later. And I'm very interested to see and hear some of your responses on this. I hope that some of you will respond. Some of you do a great job, by the way, responding in the DMs to stuff like this. But like, I want to know what your thought is on that question, because I think there's some good answers out there that some of you may have that I'd love to share once I open this question up to a bigger segment in the future. So anyway, that's our open book segment for today. I hope those questions ended up being of value to you, or at least my responses to those questions of value to you. At least those questions make you think about maybe where you are when it comes to your mentality, team over me. Are you looking at it from that perspective? Are you rendering yourself excuseless? Right? Are you saying, "Hey, I am going to do whatever it takes, no matter what, no excuses"? Because I'll be honest with you, and my players know this through and through. Like, I am a no excuses guy. Like, I honestly, I'm allergic to them. Like, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I hate excuses, seriously, because it's just I don't like them. I don't make excuses for my mess ups typically, and I hold our players to a high standard on that front. And so therefore, but I shouldn't hold you to a higher standard than you hold yourself. That's what I'm getting at on that front, right? So no excuses on that front. I hope, some of the drills, things like that. Again, I want this open book segment to always be something that's valuable to you guys, not just me joking around, having fun with it. I like it. I love you guys asking these questions, and I promise if I haven't gotten to your question yet, I'm working on it. It's a lot of questions that came in early on at the very beginning of season one, and we're still trying to navigate those and make sure they are kind of worked into the show. So, anyway, enough of me rambling. Let's take a quick commercial break, and I'll come right back with you guys to wrap up the show with my 12 rules of success when it comes to life and working with people. So we'll be right back. All right, guys. Thank you once again for pausing this very last time. I hope the show has been great so far. Really excited to share with you here in a second about our 12 rules of success. But before I do that, just want to highlight my company, Impact Financial Alliance. First of all, thank y'all so much for giving me an opportunity just to share this with you. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, I've been in this industry for 9 years. A lot of expertise in it, and get an opportunity to share with people about investing their money, using insurance to their advantage, and a lot of other different financial keys that can help you have a lot of success. So if you're looking for something like that, if you're looking for a different way to invest your money, or even advice on how to start and do that in an effective way, I'm more than happy to connect with you one-on-one. We can talk through email, text, meet up in person, what have you. To be able to do that and to go through that in a way that is going to make sense for you step by step over the next few months and years of your life. So thanks so much for pausing, and we'll get you right back here to the show. Okay, guys, welcome back to the show one last time. I'm going to share with you my 12 rules of success for life. Now, here's the thing. These probably have changed a little bit since I wrote them down, or they could change, or they could have variations or whatever. But I'll tell you, so this was at the beginning of 2020, before we knew COVID was coming. And I was starting my own company. Like I said, I've been in the financial services world for 9 years now. But about 4 years ago, really about 4 years ago, like this month, I started my own company called Impact Financial Alliance, as you know. And so, but I was going kind of through my version of what you would call a New Year's resolution. I'm not going to get into what I call that and how in depth I get into it, but either way, it's like kind of intense in comparison to what most people do. And so I was writing down some success tips that I learned. At that time, I was 24 years old, and so anyway, these are just 12 rules, and hopefully, you can take a couple of them or leave a couple of them, whatever. But I hope that you'll apply them, because to me, I think that when you have some principles and some guidelines to your life that you're not willing to deviate from, that makes your life a lot simpler. And for me, these 12 rules for my life and what I've seen be successful for not only myself but for other people, that are older than me and that have more experience in life than I do and more wisdom. Uh, this is just kind of what I've learned. So anyway, I'm gonna jump into these because I'm always excited to be able to share just things that I've learned with other people. So with that being said, let me just jump into this. So number one, obviously I wrote these down, so I'm gonna kind of be looking on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube or whatever on video. But so the first one is to trust yourself and not to always worry about what other people say. And when I wrote this one down, I was thinking about it in the sense of when you look at the man or woman in the mirror, can you trust her enough? Can you trust him enough to be able to go out and accomplish the goals that you have set in front of you, right? And it's not saying do it alone, okay? But it's to trust yourself, trust your abilities to be able to be successful. And I think that there's a certain level of mental strength that's required to be able to truly trust yourself. And I think about some of my players today. We Every year I do exit interviews at the end of the fall ball season. So at the end of in December. So we've had our Christmas party. Typically mid December, Christmas rolls around, and usually I reserve about 3 days between Christmas and New Year's for my exit interviews with all the players on the team. And so it's a combination of like foreshadowing next season. We're talking about last season, just cutting up a little bit, just kind of get some information laid out, blah blah blah. But part of that's also just talking about themselves and them opening up a little bit. And a lot of times there's a few players each season who struggle with self confidence, and it's to a point to where like they're legit though. By the way, like virtually every player I've ever coached is legit. But like usually the players who are legit, they're the ones that have the biggest self confidence issues. And it's to the point to where it's like me, the coach, I believe in them more than they believe in themselves. Right? I trust them more in big time moments than they do. And they deliver typically, right? Which is crazy. I'm like, how can you not trust yourself? You deliver often, right? But that's just how it goes sometimes, right? And so if you don't trust yourself yet, then I encourage you to get with a mentor, which is on my list. But I encourage you to get with a mentor, somebody that can help you navigate through that trust level, and take that mentality to the next level. Okay, I don't want to take forever on each of these because there's 12 of them. All right, number two is to team up and have an accountability partner. And man, I'll tell you, one thing that my father-in-law has always said is that we're better together. And I've internalized that. I believe in that. As a coach, we're better together. I think about every facet of my life. Last segment I talked about what do I do, outside of coaching, right? I like to travel with family. I coach with assistant coaches. I referee with referee partners, right? There's a lot of things that I do. I shoot this podcast. I do a lot of it. The shooting of it is with me, but the redistribution of the material my wife helps me with, right? So I do a lot of things with other people, okay? And so I team up. I do that. Even with running is which is a long time hobby of mine. That may be one of the only things that I do alone because that's just kind of my peaceful time. But I'm still technically doing it with somebody because I'm listening to a podcast in my ear, right? That's talking about running or doing something else, right? So again, teaming up, having accountability partners in certain areas of your life, so important. Because as I always say, like you can add value to people, people can add value to you. That two-way street, nothing beats it to me, in my opinion. So teaming up with people and being willing to, own something and navigate that with somebody else is a big deal. Number three, learn from your mistakes, man. So mistakes are just wasted if we don't learn from them. And I've had to learn from my mistakes. And again, I'm a writer, and I guess that's one of the things that I do that a lot of people didn't know before I became a publisher out here or whatever. But I love to write, and I actually early on in my life, in my teens and early 20s, like I was writing poems like religiously. I have a book of poems that are just kind of laying around, not doing anything. But like the point is though, is I like to write, and so I write down some of my mistakes. I learned from those by writing down those and figuring out like, okay, well, what could I have done better, right? Because to me, experiences are about learning, whether they're good or bad. Okay, whether they yielded something good for you, what you deem to be good, or what you may have deemed to be bad. Experiences are about learning, though, and to me, there's really no greater teacher out there than experience itself. Sound like I just went through puberty right there all over again. But experience is important, and I think you gotta learn from your mistakes to be able to make those the quote unquote bad experiences worth it. Because applying that to the game of baseball and softball, if you go out and you're going through what you deem to be a slump, right? And you're 0 for 15, and you've popped the ball up 4 times and you've struck out the other 11. Well, obviously something's off right now. Usually it's probably mental, but either way, regardless of what it is, whether it's mental or physical, you're in a situation right there where you have a great opportunity to learn from what is going on. And if you don't know what's going on and you got witnesses to what's going on, what do? Ask for help, right? Reach out and say, "Yo, coach, what's going on? What am I doing wrong?" Or be bold enough or humble enough to ask a teammate, "What's going on? What am I doing wrong?" Right? Because here's the thing, I believe that some of the best teammates to ask is the person on deck, because he or she may be seeing your bat the most, or somebody that's out on base while in your at bat, right? Hopefully your teammates in the dugout are obviously also watching, but they may be cheering, right? They may not be watching the technicality of your swing, but the person on deck, the person in the hole, the chances of them being watching your swing may be higher than others, right? So either way, point is though, learn from those mistakes, be willing to ask for help when you need it. Number 4, this is one that I have had a great benefit of. I've had some really good mentors in my life. And so I use the word profit here, but I said in my notes, profit from your mentors. And that doesn't mean monetarily speaking. I'm saying learn from them and learn from their mistakes, their shortcomings, but learn from the knowledge and wisdom that they're giving you and telling you, right? Connect with the experienced people in your life, in your field, right? Whether it's something that you're studying, whether, that could be a game that you're playing, a sport, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish or pull off. Like, the people that are mentoring you, soak it in, because I'll tell you, the the people and players that I have reached out to and lended a helping hand to, I pray, one, that they know for certain that that's a lifelong reach out, right? And a lot of times when it comes to mentors, that's the case. They're willing to give you their time, right? To pick their brains, to do whatever that you need they need of you, right? And so because of that, like, take advantage of it. And again, not in a bad way, not monetarily or whatever, way that may be negative or whatever in this sense. Like, the word profit in this sense is cash in, like make sure that you are making good use of their time and your time. because every minute that you spend with your mentor, they could be spending with someone else, right? And so you want to value their time by making sure that you're soaking in as much as you possibly can. So that would be my advice on that front. Number 5, I could spend so much time on this one, but I won't, I promise. So, but number 5, choose a nourishing environment. And what I mean by that, guys, is the you're not always going to be in the perfect environment, right? Like ideal conditions are few and far between. We understand that. Like there's, we always say in a perfect world, blase blase, but a perfect world doesn't exist. So the next best thing to a perfect world is an environment where you can be groomed, nourished, right? Cultivated into something better than you were yesterday. Part of that comes from choosing great mentors. Part of that comes from learning from your parents, good and bad. It comes from learning from your peers, good and bad, right? That's understanding what that looks like. And so you begin to learn from the people around you, and that nourishing environment begins to take shape because you've put yourself there, right? So I'm gonna hold it at that. Number 6, number 6, break the rules sometimes. Don't ugh, don't be status quo, right? I don't remember. So I grew up in an age of like High School Musical, like 1, 2, and 3. I watched all of them. Also, I was a thespian. Like I was big into musical theater, loved it, whatever. I love it now. So anyway, that's another fun fact about me. It's off the beaten path. But either way, the point is though is that where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So status quo. That was a song like stick to the status quo in the movie. And but I think about that term status quo. It's just I don't even like to think about it, right? Because status quo is another word for average, mundane, basic, right? Like I know the generation now in high school, like you guys use that term, I guess, basic a lot, or like or mid or whatever. But like either way, that's all the same to me. Nobody wants to be mid. Nobody wants to be basic, whatever. Right? Like break the rules sometimes. Okay? Don't. And again, within reason. Okay? Like that's not like go out and rob a bank. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like be willing to do things that the handbook says that doesn't say. Right? Like go that extra mile is really what I'm talking about when I say that. When I was talking to myself about this, like that's what I'm saying. Go that extra mile. Because you know what, guys? There's a lot of room along the extra mile. And I hope that didn't just go over your head. Because all I'm saying on that front is that a lot of people, because they stick to the status quo and they're average, they say they want to be better and they want to do more, right? And they want to grow, but they're still on the road to status quo. The people who go that extra mile are the ones who get more benefits. They reap more benefits out there because one, it's not crowded, right? And you're not having to fight against everybody else. But number two, there's just something about putting in a little bit more effort than the guy next to you, right? And a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times it leads to greater success, right? So you think about the people that you know who have had great success in their life, or you're looking at people, or you're doing the no by playing the comparison game with somebody on social media or whatever. You're like, man, well, why do they have the success that I don't have? Well, first of all, instead of being jealous, go ask them. What have they done? What did they do to get there where they are today? Nothing wrong with that, right? But my point is, break the rules. Be willing to go extra, do more, be more, have more, right? And I think about that be do have. That's always been something that I've told myself. Like Be, do, have in that order, right? Who you are matters first, right? That determines what you do, and then that determines what you have. What you have and what you do does not define who you are. It doesn't go in that order. Okay? Make sure, rewind this part if that didn't make sense to you. But just remember, be, do, have. That has nothing to do with this, by the way, but that's just a freebie that I'm throwing in there. All right. So, number 7, we're halfway home, guys. Number 7, invite competition, right? Because here's the thing. I think about this. It used to didn't make sense to me when I looked at this, like, whenever just out and about. Okay, like I told you, guys, I like to travel, and you see certain things. I'm like, man, why do they do that? So I think about this. Think about grocery stores, for example. Successful grocery stores typically have another grocery store within about 5 miles of it. Right? There's a city next door to us. I live in Eatonton, Georgia. There's a city next door to us called Milledgeville, which actually used to be the capital of Georgia way, way back when. And there's a Kroger in Milledgeville, literally across the street, guys. They're building a Publix. Why? Why would you do that? Right? But I guarantee you, Kroger owners, they're not shaking in their boots about that. They're cool with it because that competition is going to sharpen both of their irons. And so now it's not, again, Kroger was having success where it was now, but the likelihood over the long haul, it'll have continued success, and because of the competition that's right across the street. And so we apply that grocery store analogy to us as competitors, right? We compete. We want to compete against people on our level and above our level. And even the ones that are slightly below our level, we want to compete against them to make sure we can still beat them, right? The people on our level are the ones that we're going to go back and forth with the 50-50 ball. Okay, and the people above our level, they may beat us more often than we beat them. But man, at each individual level, though, us inviting that competition into our lives helps us be better. It helps us be a better version of ourselves, right? When I go running with a partner, my time's usually better, right? And I could tell you, like, we're not competing, but we are, right? Even though we're helping each other, or we're having a chat, we're talking or whatever, but like I'm trying to be better in their presence, right? Like I'm trying to be the best version of myself, not because I'm trying to show off or whatever, but it's like just competition. It's friendly sometimes it's not so friendly. But regardless, competition is good for us, right? It helps us. Iron sharpens iron, right? Whatever analogy, cliche you want to use in that sense, it's good for us. Invite it into your life. If you don't have competition in your life and you're the top dog in something, then go get you some competition so you can go be better. And then once you're the top dog there, level up again, right? That's how we grow. That's how we get better. That's how that fuel, right, grows in us, and we're able to, really do damage in terms of, the way that we're growing our game, or our studies, or whatever it is that you're focused on. Okay. All right, number 8, and I mentioned this earlier. I'll keep it short and sweet. Work your butt off. Okay, work your butt off. There's no sugarcoat to that. All right, none. Success doesn't have shortcuts. It doesn't really. At the end of the day, like you have to take you have to take the path, right? Sometimes it's the path less traveled, but either way, you have to take the path that has resistance, because if what you're doing is going along the path of least resistance, you're not going to reach the pinnacle of success that you would have had you taken the path that requires challenges, obstacles, rainy days, whatever. Sometimes God is going to drag you through the mud a little bit, okay, with whatever your craft may be. For most of you listening, it's coaching or parenting or playing the game of softball or baseball. Sometimes you're going to be challenged at a heavy level along the way until you find that breakthrough moment, right? Now you've arrived, right? But there's steps along the way, right? For us in our game, it's rec ball, it's it's middle school ball, it's travel ball, it's high school ball, it's collegiately. And for some of you out there, it's going to the pro level. And at that point, I guess you've arrived, right? But my point is though is that you got to work your butt off. There is no easy route when it comes to that. Okay? Hard work gives us a greater chance of success than maybe going the lazy route or the route that looks like it's going to be the easier one and you can just kind of sneak around and do whatever, right? And oh, by the way, when you work hard, you appreciate where you get to, right? Whether it's the highest level of your craft or not, you should hopefully appreciate it more when you work hard at it. Okay. All right. Cool. Number 9, super important. Stay hungry. Okay. And I will be very specific. Like I said, I was writing this to my business self. Okay. And I was writing this down and just as I began to launch my new business, I wanted to have these on paper and I look at these, I look at these every single day, right? During that stretch, especially during COVID, I had a lot of time at home to do that. Stay hungry. And I love that this was on the list because I wrote this to myself 2.5 months before COVID hit, right? And during COVID, guys, we had a lot of excuses just like to not continue going. It's like, let's just stay at home and then like stay in the bed and watch TV and da da da. Poor little old me, right? No, stay hungry. And so reading this out loud to myself or texting all of this out to myself and reading it again that way, whatever that looked like for me in that on that day, when I got to stay hungry, I was good. Like I was already motivated by everything else, the first 8 ones, but like stay hungry is one that sticks heavy in me today. Because I am the kind of person who I'm a grinder. Like I get after it. And I try to instill that same mentality in my players, whoever my business partners, whoever it is. And so anyway, all that to say, like, don't ever don't ever be full when it comes to what you're working on in that moment. Okay? You can apply that to your academics, you can apply that to your athletics, you can apply that to your relationships in life. You can apply that to, whatever it may be. Don't be full. Be hungry, stay hungry, lock in and stay focused. All right. Number 10. Struggling to read my own handwriting. All right, number 10. Don't be afraid to fail. Man, another one I can spend a whole segment on this one, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Who cares? Failures are part of the game, right? Guys, do you understand for you softball, baseball players out here? You play the only sport in the world where you can fail 7 out of 10 times in this game and still be called a Hall of Famer. That's crazy, right? Imagine a quarterback completing 30% of his passes in football. Imagine Steph Curry shooting only 30% from the three-point line. That's no good. Steph Curry isn't Steph Curry if he's shooting 30% from the free throw from the free throw line for sure, but from the three-point line, right? So you play a sport that failure is all around you. You're literally trying to hit a round ball with a round bat. Come on, guys. Right? Baseball player, seriously, let's think about that. A round ball, the round bat, a guy standing 60 foot 6 inches away. He's 3 to 5 feet closer after he strides out at you. And oh, by the way, he's throwing a BB at you at 90 miles per hour. Okay? What you do is not easy. That's my point. Okay? What you do isn't easy. Your game is set up for failure. Okay? Because of that, you can't be afraid of it. Otherwise, this isn't the game for you. And I'm going to have some people on the show. I'm going to have some basketball coaches, players, football players on the show, probably this season and next, that might check me on this, but I'm going to say it. I don't believe that you can put a player from another sport in our sport, baseball or softball, and he or she have the amount of success as it would be reversed. Meaning that you go take a baseball player and you put him on the basketball court, he'll compete. Put him on the football field, he'll compete. You take a girl that plays basketball for a living and you put her on the softball field and tell her to hop in the box, I don't think she'd stand a chance if she hadn't done it before. That's just my opinion. Okay. Again, I know I might get checked on that. I'm actually going to request that I get checked on that because I like competition, right? But my point is that you can't be afraid to fail in our game, guys, because it's a part of it. It really is. And you can do number 8 on my list. You can work your butt off and still fail 7, 8 times out of 10, sometimes 9 times out of 10. And you know what? You still got to get back up. You still got to get back up and work hard and get after it again. If you love the game enough, you'll do it. You'll absolutely do it. And nobody will have to convince you to do it either. So that's number 10. Number 11, ignore the naysayers. I almost laughed because there was I don't know if you guys watch, some of you maybe watch college football. And at the time of this recording, the national championship has not happened yet, by the way. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But if I mention the word naysayers, some of you know what I'm talking about. Speaking of Jalen Milroe. Anyway, the Alabama quarterback. But anyway, my point is ignore ignore the naysayers. And there's a lot of different roads I can go down on this specific rule that I have, but there's a difference between caring about the opinions of the people who matter and caring about the opinions who don't matter, right? The ones who matter to you, their opinions matter because they're playing a very specific role in your life that you're allowing them to play. Mentor is one of them, right? Advisor, friend, close family, which is also friend. You're allowing them to be there in your life. Therefore, you're saying, putting that stamp of approval on their opinion, saying, yes, it does matter. The naysayers, the people out there and about who, they may be cheering for you on your come up, but when you get there, they root for your downfall, right? Those are the naysayers, right? They all look the same, relatively speaking, right? They're all it's all the same. Those people don't matter, right? And I hate to get so serious with you, but not smiling about this one because you really have to guard your peace and make sure that they are not louder in your ear than the people in your circle who matter, right? If somebody in your circle is saying, hey, what you're doing is off, what you're doing is wrong, what you're doing needs to be tweaked, listen to them. Because again, they have your best interest in mind, right? If they're a mentor, if there's somebody who cares about you, they're going to take care of you on that front, right? But a naysayer, they care less about you, right? Therefore, you have to care less about them and their opinion. And that's a fact. All right. Last one, number 12, as we're wrapping up the show here. And this is, what can I say? I live and die by this one, man. I really do. And I every single day, guys, I wake up with an attitude of gratitude and I try to make sure that the people that I come in contact with, I've left them better than I found them. And so number 12 is simply to give something back. Help people any way you possibly can. If it's if it is, guys, if it is as simple as dishing out an encouraging word to somebody, then that's what it is. If it's you giving money to somebody, that's what it is. If it's you giving fruit to the homeless guy on the side of the interstate off ramp exit, that's what it is. If it's you helping a friend, if it's you changing a tire, if it's whatever, guys, okay, whatever that is, we can go down the whole laundry list of that. But I tell you, man, if you will wake up every day and say, "Hey, who am I going to help today?" Forget about who helps you, because you're not helping people so that they will help you, right? You're helping people to make the world a better place. And ultimately, that's what it's about. That's partly why we're here. That's partly why God put us on this earth, is to make it a better place. It's to make Him known. And so, guys, I mean, what can I say? I'm such a big proponent of love and letting that be the leader of our words, our thoughts, and our actions. And you can't love without being willing to give back to people, whether that be through your time, your money, your resources, whatever you have. So, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure just going through this with you today. I hope that you've taken a lot of notes. I hope that you are working on your goals, your New Year's resolutions. I hope you're working on being a greater you, because a greater you leads to a greater world. And a greater world leads to a more peaceful place for all of us. It leads for a more fun place. And it makes this thing be a lot more cozy and awesome for everybody. So, with that being said, we are going to sign this show off like we always do. And so please, guys, let all you do be done in love. Because at the end of the day, that is truly what makes the world go round. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.